I am Jen from Between the Stitches, and I'm a knitter from South Wales in the UK. And if you're new here, welcome. And if you're returning, thank you for coming back to watch another video. I thought today I would do a bit of a yarn stash tour and show you through pretty much everything I've got at the moment and if I have plans for things or what I'm using it for. So you can see some of my bags here. I will start by just saying that when I initially started knitting a little over a year ago, I only bought yarn for a project, made the project, and then bought yarn for the next project. Um, but naturally, over the past year and a bit, I have then built up leftovers from things I've made, as well as getting more and more ideas about what I want to make, and I started to make more than one thing at a time. So I've now got a reasonable amount of yarn in stash. I never thought I would be a person that would have a stash really. Um, but the bug has just got into me. I can't help myself. I get so excited. I still try and make sure that most things I buy are with a plan for a specific pattern in mind, just so that I don't have yarn sat in my stash for ages that just never gets used because there's never been any plan for it. Um, you'll see there's maybe a couple of things where I don't have plans at the moment, or I'm not quite sure what I'm going to use it for. I know that some people might think this is a lot, some other people might have way more yarn than this in stash. I don't want anyone to compare to what I have. Everybody's different, they want to spend more or less money on things. Yeah, so please don't compare yourself to me or anybody else, and do things the way that you want to do them. And finally, I still haven't really found an appropriate way to store my yarn that I'm not using, and I am looking for some ideas. The current situation is that the yarn is in lots of bags, kind of like the organza bags that come with the wool warehouse stuff, or in project bags that I have. So it's not all that organized. I try and keep things together as much as possible in relevant sections. And then it all just gets stashed behind my sofa, like under the windowsill where people can't see it. But it's getting to a point where I think I need a bit of a better organization system. So the only idea I've had so far is getting some kind of airtight underbed storage box I can put underneath my bed in our bedroom. If anyone has any other ideas, please let me know. The main issue is that I don't have a room I can have as a craft room at the moment, so that's not an option. I'd love to have a room where I have bookshelves, a cozy chair to sit and read in, and shelves for my knitting stuff. And I'd probably even venture into sewing if I had the space for all of that stuff. But that is in my dream world where I have a massive house where I have the space for all this stuff. So yeah, maybe one day. Um, Anyway, without further ado, I am going to go through my stash, and I don't think I'm going to go through it in any particular order. So let's just get started. The first thing I will show you is something that I have recently purchased, and I'll probably talk about it in my next podcast video as well. Um, but it is from Knitting for Olive, and there is just one ball of merino in the colour bark and one ball of their compatible cashmere in the same colour. And I'm using these together like this. This is my swatch, and I've actually started the project, so I'll show you it. But this is for a friend that's having a baby. So hopefully she won't be watching this video. Um, this is going to be the baby bear bonnet from Knitting for Olive. I have not used their compatible cashmere before, and I have to say it is so lovely. This swatch has turned out so soft. I'm very impressed, and it's definitely something, a combination with the merino and the cashmere that I want to make myself a full garment in at some point. Obviously, that would be a reasonably expensive garment, so I don't know when I'll get around to that. But yeah, it's a really lovely combo if you're looking for something that is including cashmere. Next is some yarn that I am planning to use soon for a spring summer knit, and I have talked about this before on my podcast. And this is the Sanders Garn Lena in the colour, I think it's matcha and white, and I'm going to do stripes for a Lusk tee, which is a pattern by Rebecca Clow. This is a linen blend, so it is 53% cotton, 33% viscose, and 14% linen. So it is a perfect yarn for spring and summer knits. And I will show you my swatch. It is, I think, a DK weight. Yes, it's 20 stitches and 10 centimeters. And here is my swatch. So I wasn't sure whether to do thicker or thinner stripes, but I quite like this 2x2 stripe for this t-shirt, and I'm excited to get started on this very soon. So I have the full t-shirt worth quantity of that ready to go very shortly. Next up is a beautiful greeny yellow yarn that I just couldn't not get before they are not available anymore, and that is the Cumbria worsted from the Fibre Co, and this is in the colour Helvellyn, which I also love the fact that this name is, I don't know if it's intentionally, but it is a Welsh word as well. Yeah, so that's fun. But this is such a gorgeous greeny yellow colour. Perfect for, like, again, springy vibes. Obviously, I'm not going to get round to knitting a jumper in this for this spring at this point. But essentially, the Fibre Co is unfortunately closing down, and it's getting harder and harder to get hold of their yarns. And I've heard so many good things about their Cumbria that I really wanted to use it before it's no longer possible. Obviously, if I love it, then it's a bit tough because I'm not going to be able to use it again, but that's fine. And I'm not 100% sure what jumper I want to make with this. It's obviously a worsted weight yarn, and I'm thinking of possibly knitting the Synapis pullover. I can't remember the name of the pattern designer, but I'll put a photo and I'll put the information in the description below. It's a really beautiful, I think it's a drop shoulder from the top of my head, and it's got these lace eyelet details along the hemline just before the ribbing, and the same on the sleeves, and it just elevates it and makes it a bit more like delicate and feminine feeling. So I think that's a really beautiful pattern. Or the other one I'd really like to make is something like the Mindy sweater from Sanders Garn, but I can't really get hold of that without buying a full sweater's quantity of Sanders Garn, so I don't think that's practical. So I expect it will be the Synapis pullover. I also forgot to mention the fibre content. So this is a 90% wool and 10% mohair blend. So it's got this very slight halo to it. It's a lot softer than I expected, especially compared to my Peace Fleece worsted weight yarn, which is a lot more rustic feeling. This feels surprisingly soft, and I'm sure that when it's blocked, it will feel even softer. So that is this yarn, and I've got, I think, 8 skeins of this. Because I wasn't sure what pattern I was going to use, I wanted to have like the maximum I felt that I would need for an oversized sweater. And then I can always use leftovers for something like a jumper, something like a hat. I have this combination of knitting for olive merino in the colour Thundercloud, and their soft silk mohair in rainy day. And this is what I held together to make my Lanark sweater stockinette version, sorry. The kind of quarter zip one in the stockinette, which I'll put a photo of. So I have maybe like 1.5-ish balls left, and I think this, again, it would make a really nice hat. and it's probably a decent amount to make some sort of hat pattern or otherwise a scarf. So I think I will try and use this at some point. Um, I don't really need to go into the yarn content, but this is a merino and this is a silk mohair. They are both fingering weight yarns. When held together, they are DK. I also have these left over from my Olga sweater. So these are both drops cotton merino. This is in the colour, I think, like burgundy or Bordeaux. And then this is I can't remember what it's called. I think it was like a light blue jeans blue. It's colour number 16, and this was colour number 7, I believe. It was really hard to get hold of this colour because it's no longer made, and I actually found it online in a store somewhere in Europe that I paid a fair amount of shipping to get hold of. And then when it came, it was a lot more pinky than I was kind of wanting. I was wanting much more of like a wine red burgundy. Um, but I still love that jumper, and I was very impressed with this yarn overall. It is 50% wool and 50% cotton, and again, I think it's DK. The only thing I found is it's a bit splitty, and over time it's kind of on my jumper like blended and felted together a little bit, but I still really like this yarn and I definitely would use it again. I don't know what I'm going to do with this and whether I'm going to get around to using it. I could potentially use this blue cotton merino blend for I'm really wanting to do like a lace little head bandana. And I think that could actually work well for that. So maybe I'll see if there's any patterns that call for a DK. I'm not sure. May destash this, see if anyone would like to buy it. I have sold yarn scraps before on Vinted, and people do seem to like to buy things, particularly as this one's a full ball. We shall see if I decide to do something with it. I have this random ball of Santa's Gone Sunday. I can't remember what the colour is. It might be ice blue, and the number of the colour is 6501. It is a 100% merino wool, which is non-superwash, and I think it's a fingering weight. And I bought this and then a different colour blue in the tin Pigment to compare the colours for my Norma sweater, and I ended up going with the tin Pigment blue. So I just had this one ball of Sunday that I can't bring myself to get rid of, but I don't know what I'm going to do with it. So maybe eventually I will get rid of it if it just keeps sitting in my stash not getting used. But it's here at the moment. This bag has all the scraps left over from my Norma sweater. You'll notice that there's quite a lot in here, and this is something that I find quite often, is that I buy the recommended amount of yarn and I end up with way too much left over. I don't know why this happens. Maybe my gauge is not what I think it is in my finished project, but I've got quite a bit left over, and again, I can't really bring myself to get rid of this. I feel like I could definitely do something with this yarn. I thought about kind of hacking a hat into the Norma beanie pattern, because the gauge of the Norma beanie is the same gauge as the new Norma rather than the original Norma, so it wouldn't work with this yarn. But essentially I've got Tin Pier Ghent, which a lot of people will be familiar with. It is a 100% Norwegian wool, and I think this is like a fingering weight yarn, and this one I held on its own, and then the other colours I held along with a mohair. So this is colour 6032. It was just a bit of a brighter blue than the Sunday that I chose not to use. And then I have again Tin Pigment in the colour 3880, which I think is chocolate. I have 2 and a bit balls of the chocolate brown, and I have 1 ball of the blue. I also have 2 and a bit balls of this beige colour, which is 2641. And I also have some of the leftover mohair. So this is the chocolate colour from Knitting for Olive Soft Silk Mohair. And I've got basically 2 balls of that. I've just got less than a ball of the powder colour Soft Silk Mohair from Knitting for Olive that I held with the beige colour. And that is because I'm using the balls of this that I had to do the Chilton socks. So this is the mohair I'm holding with my sock yarn to do my Chilton socks. So I thought that was a good way to use up this. But yeah, it's the powder colour soft silk mohair. That is all my leftovers from my Norma sweater. I have a single ball of Camera Rose Sneffnug in the colour Snowflake. This is a blown yarn. It is so soft. I think it's like a chunky weight, maybe Aran. Again, I can't remember these yarn weights off the top of my head. And I'm not very good at looking the like stitch count. But I bought this quite early on when I started knitting, and I held it with the Drops Kid Silk Mohair to do a balaclava, but it just did not go very well. It looked ridiculous, and I unraveled it, and then all of that yarn like stuck together because the Kid Silk Mohair from Drops is really sticky and horrible. So I ended up wasting a ball of this, and then this is what I have got left, and it's not the cheapest yarn, so I didn't want to throw it out. So I've got it, and I'm not really sure what I'm going to do with it. So if anyone has any ideas for what I could do with 1 ball of Sneffnug, please let me know. Last bag in this big bag is all my sock yarn scraps. A lot of them aren't really like scraps, there's actually quite a lot in there. So I will go through these. First, I have these leftover Cascade Heritage that I used for my Itty Bitty Berry Socks, which is a pattern by Stone Knits. This so cute. So yeah, essentially I used this red for the strawberries, and I used the green for the leaves of the strawberries. Anyone who has used Cascade Heritage, I'm sure you all know this is a lovely soft yarn. I think it's merino, but I'm not 100% sure. But yeah, it's a standard, like it must be merino nylon blend, I'm assuming. 4-ply sock yarn, and I am definitely going to use these. There's loads left because it only used a tiny amount for the socks. I think there's a cabled pattern in one of my Summerly Knits sock books that I want to make with this red one. I think it will look so nice in a cabled sock. And then I'm not 100% sure what I'm going to do with the green. I could use it as like a contrast color or feature color in any future colorwork socks that I do. I feel like with sock yarns, it's always handy to just keep your scraps because you just don't know when you're going to want to use them for colorwork. I also have this gorgeous green variegated or kind of tonal green from Pixie Yarns, which is a UK-based hand dyer. I think I've got the little, yeah, here we go. So it's called Bryophytes, that's the colour. It's a fingering weight, 75% merino, 25% nylon. Yeah, essentially it's a beautiful hand-dyed yarn. I really love this company. All the yarns I've had from them are beautiful. And I use these as the green background for my herding cow sock, which is another stone knit pattern. Again, it's really lovely and soft yarn. I have this, I think it's a lavender coloured merino sock yarn from Yarn Smiths, which is the brand of yarn from Wool Warehouse. It's their own yarn brand. I used this for my first ever socks that I did, and if you've watched my previous video about everything I knit in my first year, you will know that those got scrapped and put in the bin, but I obviously kept the yarn, so I really didn't use very much. One thing about this is I think I bought the exact same colour more recently for some like mermaid socks that I'm gonna make. And I didn't realise that it was the same colour. So I now have loads of lavender sock yarn, but that's fine. It's a cute colour. Now these, hopefully I can show you them without dropping them everywhere, are little mini skeins that were also from Pixie Yarns. And this was from a fade set called Footsteps 2. There were obviously 6 mini skeins and 75% merino, 25% nylon. I used these for the leaves for my autumn leaf socks, again by Stone Knits. Can you tell I like colourwork socks? So I was really looking for some nice hand-dyed yarn to do the colours for these socks, and I came across this set and I just immediately thought these were perfect for what I was looking for like autumnal leaf colours, and they do look beautiful. And again, just keeping them for future colourwork socks that I might do where I might need these kinds of colours. Also, these are in these little balls because I literally hand wound each of the 6 skeins and it took so long. My hands were hurting. Essentially, a ball winder is just not small enough, or at least mine isn't, to do a mini skein. So I had to hand wind them, which is a pain. I have these 2 different tweed coloured sock yarns as well, which were used for backgrounds of the strawberry socks and the autumn leaf socks. This one is Rico Design Superba Tweed. Again, it's a 4-ply sock yarn. It is 60% wool, 30% polyamide, and 7% acrylic, 3% viscose. It's got these lovely colourful tweedy bits, and it worked really well as the background for my strawberry socks, and there's still quite a bit left. I wonder if I could get another pair of colourwork socks out of this. Then I've got, so this one is the Lana Grossa, I'm not going to say this correctly, melon white tweed. I also, sorry, forgot to mention the colour 001. I can't remember what it was called. Sorry, and this is the Lana Grossa melon white tweed in 106. It's like a beige tweed. It's really subtle, but you can't see the tweed that well. I'm hoping you can see little bits of it in the camera. And that worked beautifully for the autumn socks. I have this little skein of Lang Jowl, and the reason I know this is jowl without the label is because it has the little spool of, I can't remember what it is in the middle, but it's essentially, I think maybe nylon to reinforce your heels. So it's just white colour from Lang Jowl, always handy for colourwork socks. This random combination of mini skeins that I've balled up not very well, which I use for my herding cows socks. So I just use all of the different colours for the cows, the noses. They are a combination of yarns from both Pixie Yarns and Folkestone Harbour, which are both UK-based hand dyers. I can't remember what the fibre content was for them, but again, just handy colours to have for little bits of colour. Those are all my sock scraps, and next I will talk about this. So this is a tweed yarn that my sister-in-law bought me for Christmas. It is from Sostrena Granite, which I love that shop. I could literally buy everything in there, but they have some really cute knitting stuff, and she got me this. It is 85% wool, 10% acrylic, and 5% viscose. I can't see anything about a colourway, but it is this lovely navy deep blue. I think this would make a really nice little scarf or hat again. Next, I have this absolutely beautiful yarn that I got to do the jaunty shawl from Andrea Mowry. I will show you my little piece of jaunty that is just sat waiting for attention. But this is from, again, I'm going to butcher this, Shopple Wool, so Bull Crazy, in the colour Backlight or 1153. So I've got two balls of this. It you can't see all the colours from the ball because they're obviously wrapped in, but it's this like plied thing where each bit has two colours plied together. So it's kind of reminds me of handspun yarn, and it makes this again just stunning autumnal colour as it goes. It kind of goes like a ombre fade rather than stripes. Yeah, it is just beautiful, and I do really want to crack on with this year and get it done. So that is one of my main goals for like finishing things that I've started. I don't have a lot of things that I start and put aside, but this is one. So I really need to get on with it. But this is actually a sock yarn, 75% wool and 25% nylon or polyamide. Yeah, sock weight. I will show you my teeny little bit of jaunty shawl. So you can see how beautiful the kind of like fade ombre effect is and how the colours look as you're working them. I think this is just going to be a lovely little scarf once it's done. I just need to get on with it, to be honest, but obviously not right now, spring, summer, but maybe towards the end of the summer we'll crack on with this. Next, I actually have a new yarn acquisition, which you won't have seen yet. It is from Knitting for Olive. So this came in the same order as the bark colour cashmere merino that I'm making the baby bear hat with. So this is the merino in Bordeaux and ochre brown. I'm holding these singly to do stripes, and this is for the Bloodroot tea from Andrea Gorn. I have already swatched them. This is my swatch. This is on slightly bigger needles than recommended, and I think I'm going to actually go back down to the recommended needle size. I tried both and I preferred the fabric on the recommended needle size. But yeah, this is the swatch. You can see how the colours work up together. It is a lovely ribbed tea pattern. Negative ease, which is going to be my first negative ease pattern. So I'm very excited to do that. I'm probably going to be starting that a little bit after I start the Lusk tea. That's my focus because it's more of a spring summer colourway. And then this one, I'd like it for spring summer, but this one could be a more transitional season top because it is a merino. So I'm not as bothered about starting this sooner. But yeah, I am excited to make my first negative ease top. My main issue with this is that my stitch gauge is going to be okay, but my row gauge is way off. I think it's like 12 stitches. I've got 12 more rows than it's supposed to be per 10 centimeters. So I'm going to have to do some maths, and I'm not really sure how that's going to work for the satin sleeve cap situation because I've not done that construction before, but I'm sure we'll work it out. And also because it's ribbing and stretchy, it will hopefully be quite forgiving. I won't dwell too much on the next few because they are being used for my current whips, so I talk about them in my podcast updates. But the next one is my Peace Fleece worsted. This is a worsted weight yarn in the colour Desert Tundra, and it is 75% Navajo Rambouillet. Again, I'm probably butchering this, and 25% mohair, so it has this little bit of halo quite similar to the Cumbria worsted. However, this is not as soft. This is quite a rustic yarn. There's literal bits of hay in it that I'm pulling out all the time, but I do love this yarn. The colour is gorgeous. The like dynamic colours in it. just lovely, and I am getting ever closer to finishing my finest kind that I'm using this for. I am now onto, so I've finished the body and the back yoke, and I'm now onto the front yoke. So I've just got that, the sleeves, and the neckline, which is only a tiny bit of work for the neckline. So the end is in sight. So I've currently got one ball attached to my project, and then I've got 3 more skeins um, left. So I'm hoping that's going to be enough. Again, this one I'm not going to really dwell on or go into all that much, because this is what I'm using for my BB sweater, which you can see in my podcast videos. Essentially, I've got a load of Filcolana Saga that I'm holding with Filcolana Tilia in all the various colours. And then the only exceptions to that is for 2 of the colours, I am using Arwetta, so that's the red squirrel colour. I think it's out in my project. The kind of creamy beige colour is also the Arwetta instead of Saga, but all the rest of them are Saga held with Tilia. Yeah, I'm not gonna pull them all out because there's so many balls in here, but all the colours that I'm using for my BB sweater. For Christmas, my husband got me a voucher for a local yarn shop, and I wanted to use that voucher to buy a couple of skeins of sock yarn, because I knew they had some UK hand dyed sock yarns there. So the first one is this. They're both from the same company, Red Squirrel and June, UK based hand dyer. This is their Sparkle sock. It's a 4-ply sock yarn, 75% superwash merino, 20% nylon, and 5% stellina sparkle. So I don't know if you can appreciate it from the video, but there is this tiny sparkle in it, but it's got these just gorgeous, again, like quite autumnal colours. You can tell I'm really drawn to autumn colours. However, as a side note, as much as I love autumn colours, I've recently kind of done colour analysis stuff and found out that I am a light summer slash light spring, kind of sitting between the two, but more towards the light summer side. So fortunately, these aren't my colours that suit me. That doesn't matter. I still love them. I'm going to do a bit more of a mixture of light spring and summer colours, as well as the autumnal colours that I still love anyway. But anyway, I haven't got a specific pattern yet for this. I've got a few like slip stitch sock patterns saved that I possibly will make with this one. And the other colour I got is this beautiful purpley bluey pink yarn. This one is their alpaca sock yarn. Again, a 4-ply sock yarn, and this one is 20% superfine alpaca, 60% superwash merino, and 20% nylon. And this is in the colour Mermaid Mischief. I've realised I didn't say the colour of this one. This one is oh, it's Welsh, Arced Hydref. As much as I live in Wales, I don't speak Welsh other than very basic understanding. But I believe this is a special colourway that they made for this yarn shop that I bought this for. So going back to this one, this is their Mermaid Mischief colour, and it is so soft and lovely. It's got this halo, which I'm assuming is from the alpaca. So my vision for this is the mermaid socks by Summerlee Knits, and I'm wanting to do a contrast colour heel toe cuff. So I bought some yarn for that, and I didn't like the colour and how it matched with this, so I ended up with a few different yarns that I was comparing, and I'm just going to use the other ones for another sock. I think it will work. They'll work well for other socks, so I didn't return them. But I'll pull those out. So, this was the one I originally bought, which is Filcolana Arwetta in, I think it might have been like a peacock, but the colour is 146. But it was a bit more dull coloured teal than I was wanting it to be. I may change my mind and go back to it, to be honest. I'm not sure. But at the time it arrived, was not convinced that this is what I was wanting. So I then ordered these three. This is Drops Fable in 105, which is a nice vibrant teal. This one is pretty similar. It is Yarn Smith's Merino Sock. Again, this is the one that is Wool Warehouse own yarn brand, which I really like this yarn. This one's a bit more rustic, but anyway, they're quite similar in colour, maybe very slight differences, which you couldn't really appreciate how different or similar they would be online. And then as something completely different, I ordered this lavender colour sock yarn as a different for a contrast colour. I actually think that the lavender is a bit too like similar to the sock yarn, so it's not contrasting enough for me. And this is the one that I did not remember that I already had all of it, but I think I'm going to have a load of lavender coloured socks in my future. So it's possibly between these or going back to the Arwetta. I haven't fully decided. But once I've finished my Chilton socks that I'm currently knitting, this is my next plan. So I need to decide soon. Two more left. I've got this other yarn from Pixie Yarns. I think I ordered them all at the same time. I bought this as an undyed yarn that I thought from the photo online that it was going to be more of like a cream coloured undyed. But when it came, it was this greyish colour, which is still a gorgeous colour. It is their fingering weight sock yarn. It is 70% superwash merino, 20% yak, and 10% nylon. And I think what I'm going to use this for, because it was not what I wanted for the sock project that I was doing, my plan is to maybe make a muscle burr with this, and I may get either another fingering weight sock yarn with similar kind of background colour, but maybe some other colours variegated into it, or maybe like a Surrey alpaca fluff type hand-dyed yarn that will match with this to thicken it out, because I don't think I fancy making the muscle burr in just a fingering weight sock yarn. So I need to work out what I want to hold this with, whether I want it to not be fluffy and have a similar sock yarn, or a fluff yarn to hold it with. But I'm sure I'll be able to find something lovely either from Pixie or there's another company called Camel's Yarn I know do really beautiful Surrey that have colours that would work quite well with this. So that is my plan for this yarn. And finally, my last yarn from my stash is, I can't remember if I've shown this in one of my previous videos, but anyone that's a knitter will be familiar with like yarn subscriptions. And as we were coming to the new year, I saw a load of yarn subscriptions being advertised. I'd seen them previously over the year, and I liked the idea of having maybe a sock yarn delivered once a month. But I just had this feeling that if I subscribed to a full year of subscription, I wouldn't end up using the yarn, and I'd end up with a huge stash, because there's no way I can knit 12 pairs of socks in a year as well as everything else. So I saw a company called Woolen Witch were doing a yarn subscription where you could just buy one-off ones rather than subscribing. I think most people do that, like one-off option. But I'd seen her like advent yarns for Christmas just gone, and they're so beautiful. And then she posted like the inspiration photo for this set for I think it was like the January order of her yarn subscription. I'll put the photo that she showed, and I just thought, again, these are like my favorite kind of autumnal looking colors. So I just ordered a one off for the January subscription, and So she does it where instead of doing like 100 grams skein plus a contrast color, she does 50 grams skein so that people can do two at a time socks. So you just order two, or if you don't have to. So this is the yarn that turned up. I'll put one of them down. But yeah, it's just such a beautiful, like fiery autumnal colour with these blues and pinks in. And I'll hold it that way. You can see more of the blue here. It's just gorgeous. It is a 25% bio nylon, 25% alpaca, and 50% superwash BFL. Again, it's a fingering sock yarn. And as I said, it's from Woolen Witch. They are unfortunately on a hiatus at the moment due to ill health, which is such a shame. And I think that all the yarn subscription and everything is on hold at the moment because they're not able to fulfill any orders. So I'm just keeping my eye out for when they are back. Because I do think they have beautiful hand-dyed yarns. So that is everything. I'm hoping this video won't be too long, and this is also making me realise that I have a lot more yarn in stash than I like to admit to myself. But there we are. It is what it is. I love knitting. I'm so passionate about yarn and knitting and how amazing it is for mental health and blah blah blah. I could talk forever. So I'm not gonna feel guilty about how much yarn I have. Yeah, that is my yarn stash, and I hope you enjoyed looking at it. As I say, if you have any ideas on how I could store my yarn in a more practical way, please let me know. And I look forward to seeing you again in my next video, which will probably be another knitting podcast where I update you with how I'm doing with my current works in progress. Thank you for watching.